I never planned on becoming the villain in someone else's neighborhood drama, but the day I bought that quiet stretch of farmland at the edge of a polished HOA community, I unknowingly stepped into a slow-burning war of entitlement, arrogance, and boundaries that only one of us thought were optional, and it all started with the land itself, 40 acres of uneven earth, soft in places from underground springs, dotted with old fence posts and stubborn grass that had grown wild because no one had cared for it properly in years, and that was exactly why I loved it, because it was mine. No board approvals, no pastel mailboxes, no laminated rules about grass height or paint shades, just land, silence, and the promise that if I worked it with my own hands, it would give back. And for the first few weeks after moving in, that's exactly how it was, mornings with mist rolling low, evenings with crickets and wine through tall weeds, until the tire tracks appeared, two clean, arrogant lines pressed straight through the soft soil like a signature of disrespect, cutting from the paved HOA road, through my property, and out the other side toward the lake access road. At first I thought it was a mistake, maybe a delivery driver or someone lost, so I smoothed the soil back out, packed it down, told myself it wouldn't happen again, but it did, over and over, deeper each time, carving a private shortcut into my land as if the earth itself had agreed to serve them. And that's when I saw her, the white SUV, spotless, oversized, gliding across my field like it belonged there, windows tinted, posture confident, not slowing, not hesitating, just crossing as if my land were a shared driveway, and I stood there watching, boots sinking slightly into the mud, heart beating slower but heavier, because I already knew what kind of person drove like that. The kind who never imagines consequences because life has always been out of their way, the kind people online call a Karen, and when she saw me, she didn't stop, didn't wave apologetically, didn't roll down her window. She gave me a tight smile, the kind that says I dare you, and kept going. And that was the moment the piece cracked, not loudly, but permanently, like a fracture under pressure. Later that afternoon I walked the property line again, checked my deed, the survey markers, everything crystal clear. This land was legally, undeniably mine. And that made what was happening worse, because it wasn't ignorance, it was choice. The next morning I put up a temporary sign near the entry point, private property, no trespassing, bright letters, impossible to miss, and I waited, and sure enough, around 9:12 a.m., the SUV came again, same speed, same confidence, drove right past the sign as if it were decoration. I stepped forward and raised my hand, and this time she stopped, window sliding down with mechanical irritation, sunglasses on, hair perfect, phone already in her hand like a shield, and before I could speak, she said, "We've always driven through here, not we do, not we'd like to, always," like history itself bent to her convenience. I told her calmly, evenly, that the land had new ownership, that it was private property now, that I needed her to use the public road like everyone else, and she laughed, actually laughed, a short dismissive sound, and said, "The HOA has an easement," and I asked her which one, because I'd reviewed the title thoroughly, and she hesitated, just a fraction, then snapped, "Everyone uses it," as if popularity created legality. I told her again, still calm, that there was no easement, that she was trespassing, and that I needed her to stop, and that's when the mask slipped, her voice sharpened, "Listen, I'm late, I don't have time for this," and she rolled the window back up and drove off across my land again, leaving fresh tracks, deeper now, because the ground was wet from last night's rain, and I stood there feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest, not anger exactly, but resolve, the quiet understanding that some people only recognize boundaries when they hurt. Over the next few days, the traffic increased, not just her anymore, but others, emboldened by her example, SUVs, sedans, even a golf cart once, all treating my farm like a shortcut carved by entitlement. I installed stakes with caution tape, they were knocked down, I added a second sign, removed, and then the HOA letter arrived, printed on thick paper, full of cheerful authority, informing me that residents had historically accessed the lake via my land and that my recent obstruction was causing inconvenience, like that word could erase ownership. I attended the HOA meeting out of curiosity more than hope, walking into a room full of folding chairs, scented candles, and judgment, and there she was at the front, same woman, now in charge, HOA vice president, smiling as she spoke about community cooperation, and when I explained the situation, calmly, legally, citing my survey, she sighed theatrically and said, "You should have done more research before buying," and that room nodded along, and in that moment I realized something important. They didn't see my farm as land, they saw it as leftover space, an inconvenience between them and what they wanted, and no sign or polite request was going to change that. So I stopped asking, stopped warning, and started planning, because the soil they were abusing, the mud they ignored, the land they thought was harmless, I knew it better than they ever would. I knew where the ground stayed soft year-round, where the old drainage ditch had once run before being filled in decades ago, where the earth looked solid but shifted under weight, and as I walked the field that evening, Watching the sunset bleed orange across the sky, listening to distant engines hum confidently toward their shortcut, I made a decision that would change everything, not out